one though. Los Angeles Chargers 6-5 going into Las Vegas Raiders 4-7. Vegas is a 1-point favorite here, probably off of that last week's showing against Seattle overtime win. Big Josh Jacobs game again, and arguably very well should be another big Josh Jacobs game again against this Chargers run defense that is terrible. Easiest thing to say, best thing to say about them is that they're terrible run defense. So even given all that, though, it's going to be a fun matchup because this thing has the recipe to be a shootout, right? The Raiders are bad pass defense, Chargers bad rush defense, and then once the Raiders get a run defense, they got Davante Adams to catch that 40-yard pass for a touchdown. So it's going to be hard to pick. I'm going to pick the Chargers just because I think the Raiders are slightly more beat up, even though that's kind of crazy to say, given that Keenan Allen's here and there. Mike Williams is out this game. They have half their defense, but the Raiders don't have much besides for Josh Jacobs. I know they just, and Davante Adams, but again, like they did just beat Seattle, but Seattle has had its flaws, and they kind of have Seattle's number, and they have the number of those teams that have bad run defense, and this is one of those games where the Chargers have a bad run defense, so I should be picking the Raiders. I'm sitting here giving you an arguments for picking the Raiders, but I'm still going to take the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chargers too, just because I don't know how banged up, Josh Jacobs is, because he rushed a lot in that last game. I just think he's the key to this to the win. And if he gets chipped up, I don't know who's going to come in and be able to replace that for them. I think maybe Davante could have a big game. I'm not sure. We'll see how this ends up panning out. But I'm going to go Chargers here. I mean, they're slightly scoring less, slightly. Both teams are letting up about the same amount of points. The Chargers are definitely letting up a lot of yards rushing. But I like Herbert here. I like the Chargers to go on here and try and keep making a push for the playoffs. It's more important for the Chargers here to get this dub than it is for the Raiders. I mean, you got 4 wins. It's not looking good for you. I think the Chargers are going to come out. We want to make the playoffs. It has to be this. We got to go through this to get there. So I think the Chargers are going to come out with a different mindset to try and come out and get this dub. How about you, Chuck?
These matchups this week are amazing. Like I said, you're looking at the stats right there, and it's just so hard to separate every single game almost, with the exception of, Seattle and the Rams. It's nip and tuck. You just got to pick with what you think's, working. And you were absolutely right at the beginning of the year. You were yelling for Jake, why aren't the Raiders running the ball? Just run the ball. And every time they've been in games. Jacobs has been amazing this year. The Raiders have been in, I believe I counted up 8 one-score games this year, and they've only won 2 of them. One of them included week 1 against the Chargers in LA, 24-19. The Chargers ended up hanging on for the win. I'm taking the Raiders here. The teams are so similar, not only in stats, but just in availability of personnel as well. Like you mentioned, right. Brady, banged up on both sides. You can look at the Chargers and say that they've got more diversity with the way that they spread the ball around, which I like on their behalf. And you look at the Raiders, it's like, look, it's either going to Adams or Jacobs, maybe a couple to Foster Monroe, and Matt Collins is going to catch 2 or 3 passes, but what to focus on. But people haven't been able to take that stuff away from the Raiders all season. It's been on the defensive side that kind of let them down at times. This divisional matchup, I think you throw the record books, all that stuff to the side, and this one's going to come down to a one-score game again. Maybe a field goal, maybe a touchdown. Back-to-back games for the Raiders in overtime that they've won. So maybe they got a little bit of juice going. Al Davis Jr. was talking about, hold up about the firing of McDaniels. This is my guy. He's doing a good job. We see Derek Carr up there crying every post-game loss. The players are still invested in this team. So, I don't think there's any quit in this Raiders team right now. We saw all the adversity that they went through last year. I know that galvanized a lot of them together. The Ruggs thing, the Gruden thing, all that stuff. So that's why I was a little bit higher on the Raiders this year to do some more things. Obviously, they disappointed, but I'm gonna go Raiders here.
I like it.
Smart pick.
I mean, I sat here and tried to make arguments for the Chargers, and I gave you nothing but reasons to pick the Raiders.
That's true. That's true.
I did find one reason why I like the Chargers. It's the fact that the Raiders have the lowest amount of sacks on the year of any NFL team, and they're bottom 5 for interceptions. And if you give Justin Herbert time, he's dangerous. He's very dangerous. So this is a game where Herbert should shine against a weak pass rush and a weak secondary of the Raiders. So this should be one of those games where you could go Herbert. Okay, Herbert is in that MVP conversation that he should have been in, but he hasn't been able to produce it all year long.
Well, you don't have your starters.
He's not in it because he hasn't been able to produce it all year long. And yes, he's been lost starters, lost linemen, lost receivers, blah, blah, blah.
Same old Chargers.
I'm just saying.
Same old Chargers.
Same old Chargers.
For real.
Year in, year out, curse of the Superchargers. But, all right.